Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us, and welcome back to another live session on Declassified Caribbean channel. Now, for decades, Caribbean people have been taught that independence represented the end of colonial domination and the beginning of genuine self government. National flags were raised, constitutions were adopted, and political power formally passed from European colonial administrations to local leaders. Yet, a growing number of scholars, activists, and political commentators have questioned whether independence truly delivered sovereignty in the fullest sense. This discussion explores the argument that while the Caribbean achieved political independence, economic power remained concentrated in foreign hands. According to this perspective, the end of the British, French, Dutch, and Spanish colonial rule did not necessarily result in genuine economic liberation. Instead, some argue that the region was integrated into a new system of influence dominated by American geopolitical interests, multinational corporations, international financial institutions, and global capital. Under this interpretation, independence represented not the end of external control, but a transformation in the way that control was exercised. And this is what we want to look at in this afternoon's broadcast. We want to look at the fact that we were never truly the Caribbean's new empire, how America quietly took Britain's place. Because we have been taught that we were independent because we gained our independence in the 1960s, some in the 1970s, and perhaps a few in the early part of the 1980s. But to what extent is that true? Are we truly liberated, or are we just going through what we call nominal independence, where people just have the name? We know what independence means, but at the end of the day, we have been passed on to the American empire. We must remember that we have grown up also in a region in which people talk about the United States as a democracy, a republic. But as we have been saying here, and we've invited many people on the platform, guests who have already told you with evidence that the United States is neither a democratic society, neither is it a republic. It is an empire. And its empire started way back in 1945 and beyond. So what we are seeing now, we have been thrown, after the United States became the new empire of the world, all right, then Britain, of course, fell, and the Western European nations, and we were put now into the throes, into the arms, in the claws of the United States empire. And we're going to explore that topic. So good afternoon to you, and I hope that you will also join in this very enlightening conversation. There is an article here that United States and the Caribbean from 1877 to 1920. Between 1887 and 1920, the United States' relationship with the Caribbean region underwent a profound change, which was closely tied to the transformation of the United States to an industrial and imperial power. Although the Civil War had ended large-scale territorial expansion, the nation emerged from Reconstruction with a dynamic economy that increasingly demanded overseas outlets for American exports and capital. With the U.S. government concerned primarily with domestic questions, however, private entrepreneurs and investors proved the main vehicle of U.S. influence in the Caribbean, particularly following the founding of the United Fruit Company. The Spanish-American War of 1898, I beg your pardon, brought Washington into a new imperial role in the Caribbean. So from way back when, from 1898, during the Spanish-American War, the United States was already, it had its eyes, and even before, on the Caribbean. And over the following years, the US government conducted a series of military interventions and completed the massive construction of the Panama Canal, which is gaining a lot of traction under the Trump administration. Yet businesses such as United Fruit remained a critical factor in shaping life, work, and empire in the region. The role of private enterprise in U.S. overseas influence was not unique to the post-Civil War years. In the 1850s, a New York company constructed the Panama Railroad, the world's first transcontinental railway. By the 1870s and 1880s, however, such ventures became increasingly common in the Caribbean. In Central America, the U.S. entrepreneurs built key railways and laid banana plantations, while U.S. merchants moved into Cuban sugar production. So way back when, we are seeing where the United States was having a lot of influence in the region, in the Caribbean region. Now, these Caribbean investments played a central role in the crises of the following decade. In the mid-1890s, a severe economic downturn and labor upheaval spurred many political and business leaders to embrace commercial and imperial expansion as the answer to domestic turmoil. Some even hoped overseas conflict would shore up American character and manhood. As Theodore Roosevelt admitted in 1897, I should welcome almost any war, for I think this nation needs it. Did you hear what Theodore Roosevelt said? That he should welcome almost any war, for I think this nation needs it. Now, why do you think he thinks the United States needs war? Because he thinks that war will now justify why the United States is entering the Caribbean or any nation, because war is what, and it gives the United States the impetus, right, to go into other countries and to do its imperial undertakings. But this time, their attention was focused on Cuba. By 1895, American interests held some 50 million in investments on the island, and that was from 1895. That same year, Cuban nationalists launched a war against Spain that threatened both the sugar trade and American holdings in the colony. Although U.S. officials hoped Spain would crush the rebellion quickly, the Cubans fought on, in the process winning sentimental support from much of the American public. By early 1898, Republican President William McKinley felt heightened pressure to intervene, both to halt the fighting and secure U.S. property. Following the mysterious destruction of the USS Maine in Havana Harbor in February 1898, the United States entered the war. The brief, decisive war with Spain transformed the United States into a two-ocean empire. I want to repeat that. The brief, decisive war with Spain transformed the United States into a two-ocean empire. So from 1895, 1898, the United States was already a two-ocean empire. In addition to occupying Cuba, Washington annexed Puerto Rico and Hawaii and seized control of Guam and the Philippines. Although American troops would fight a bloody 3-year war to crush Filipino nationalists, Washington avoided a similar clash with Cubans because the so-called Taylor Amendment renounced annexation of Cuba. American officials forced Cubans to accept a protectorate in 1902, which granted Washington rights to the naval base at Guantanamo Bay and gave U.S. firms a privileged position in the island's sugar industry. Meanwhile, the U.S. government established formal rule in Puerto Rico. As the Supreme Court ruled in 1901, in one of the landmark insular cases, the island was to be regarded as unincorporated territory, in essence, a colony with no path to statehood. That was what the United States intended for Cuba to be, and hence the revolution of Fidel Castro in the 1950s. Now, by this time, the attention of U.S. officials and the American public was focused on the quest for an interoceanic canal. Although private interests had previously attempted canal excavation in Nicaragua and Panama province of Colombia, the War of 1898 convinced many of the need for the U.S. government to carry out the work. In response to a fierce lobbying effort by a defunct French canal company, Washington opted for the Panama route, and when the government in Bogota refused U.S. terms, President Theodore Roosevelt sponsored Panama's secession from Colombia. So Panama used to be a part of Colombia, and the United States affected that sort of unity, right? Because of the building of the Panama Canal, which Colombia had rejected. U.S. officials then imposed a canal concession on the new republic akin to the protectorate over Cuba. The ensuing canal effort resulted in a massive reshaping of the economic and demographic landscape of Central America and the Greater Caribbean. The majority of canal workers were British West Indians, mostly from Jamaica and Barbados. Between 1904 and 1914, about 200,000 of these laborers came to Panama. To maintain order over this workforce, U.S. officials imposed a strict system of racial hierarchy and segregation. So even as canal construction changed local labor structures, the waterway's importance transformed U.S. relations with the broader Caribbean region. Americans had long viewed the region as unstable and in need of supervision. So with the seizure of Panama, however, U.S. officials viewed any instability or foreign interventions in the region as a strategic threat. In 1904, Roosevelt declared his so-called corollary to the Monroe Doctrine, which claimed the right of the United States to act as an international police power in the region. And this is what from 1904. Okay, so that's why we have to go back to history. This political supervision proceeded in tandem with pressure on the region's governments to transfer their national debts from European to American hands. So over the following years, Roosevelt and his successors drew upon this dollar diplomacy to justify military interventions and occupations in the Dominican Republic under customs supervision 1905 to 1940, occupied 1916 to 1924. So in the Dominican Republic, they had already seized the island from 1905. Okay, and they came and they had an invasion of the United States in the Dominican Republic from 1916 to 1924. Cuba was occupied from 1906 to 1909 and also in 1917. Haiti was occupied, okay, a military intervention from 1915 to 1934, and Nicaragua occupied from 1912 to 1925 and also from 1926 to 1933. So we have to make sure we're understanding these historical developments. Yet the U.S. government was not only the force shaping the Caribbean. In fact, during the first 3 decades of the 20th century, private U.S. enterprise remained the predominant influence, and none was more powerful than the United States Fruit Company, the United Fruit Company, that is. The firm had its roots in the spread of U.S. entrepreneurs in Central America and the Caribbean in the late 19th century. Part of its beginning lay in the person of Minor Cooper Keith, who played a key role in constructing the Costa Rican Railroad in the 1870s and 1880s. Employing primarily Jamaican migrants, he developed both the labor system and commercial farming techniques that would come to define United Fruit's operations. So from then, we can see that from Cuba to Costa Rica to Panama to Jamaica to Barbados, we're seeing lots of U.S. interference. Now, all of these things should let us know that we in the Caribbean are not free. And from way back when, the United States has been conniving to take over the Caribbean region. Of course, they know that we are rich in many different natural resources, and they're here to stay. Now, there was actually, good afternoon. Let us begin to greet those of you who are in already. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining, Super Batman Bro. Thank you for joining. You're from Haiti, I think, or that's your country. And we have exactly, right. So thank you so much for joining. Let's look at some of your welcome to the live. And we are here to have a very important Vive Revolution, right? And one of the things we have to thank Haiti for is that Haiti is the only country in the Caribbean, and to some extent the Dominican Republic, that actually fought for their independence. The majority of us, we just was earned, according to them, that our leaders went to Great Britain and they came up with an agreement, and that is how we got our liberties, right? But we know that independence does not just come overnight. Independence comes through hard work, right? That we have to fight for what we call freedom. Now, Sadex, good afternoon. You're saying the Caribbean leaders who play ball get millions of dollars. Their children go to US universities and get jobs in US corporations. The US will manipulate elections in their favor. Absolutely. And that is what exactly happened. So we're seeing from way back in the 19th century, from the late 19th century, after the Civil War in the United States. Remember now, the Civil War in the United States occurred from 1861 to 1865. And then the United States went on a massive venture of industrialization of the country, particularly in the South, right? But in the North too, the United States grew exponentially after the Civil War. So can you imagine by the 1880s that the United States had outgrown Great Britain? And Great Britain at the time was the empire of the world. But economically, the United States by the mid-1880s to the latter parts of the 1880s had outgrown Great Britain, right, as the economic hub or empire of the world. The Great Britain was still then the military power or the navy power of the world, if you will. But as time progressed, we saw where the United States after World War II was able to build a massive, military empire and also an economic empire. It became economically strong even so after World War II, after most of these European nations had faltered because of the war. All right, so we have to lay these things and put these things into proper context. Now, yet the United States was not only the only force, as we're saying, shaping the countries of the Caribbean. We saw where corporations are also involved or have been involved in the region. Washington's new imperial presence in the region over the next decade, it expanded its operations aggressively in Central America as well as in Cuba, following the U.S. government seizure of Panama. The company found itself competing with Washington for West Indian laborers, right? So that's what they were doing while sharing many of the racial and imperial views of U.S. officials. Indeed, like the U.S. government in the Panama Canal Zone, United Fruit maintained strict racial segregation in its enclaves. As one former manager explained, the Jamaican Negro, with his cocky attitude, tended to offend American racial sensibilities. To avoid complications, therefore, a strict color line is drawn. All persons of color must always give the right of way to whites and remove their hats while talking. A rule also forbids any laborer from entering the front yard of any white man's residence. So America was bringing its segregation, its segregation culture to the Caribbean and Latin America. Remember now that we were not accustomed to that, right? So he was talking about, this man from United Fruit Company was talking about the fact how the Caribbean immigrants are quite cocky, right, in terms of responding to these people who they say are white. Okay, remember now that we don't have any white and black people. They have said that they're whites and black because people are suggesting that, white is a symbol of righteousness and superiority. But we know that that is not true. All right, those of us who are now studying, we know that science does not back up any race. We know that race is a social construct. It is not scientific. Does it exist in the world? Yes, the concept, the ideology of the white man versus the black man does exist in the world, right? And we have to fight against, but it's rooted in ignorance. That's what we are here to fight against, that lots of these conversations are rooted in ignorance, and we are the ones who have to say, yeah, no, this is not scientifically true, right? But the white man has been very, very, what we call the white man has been very, very good at conniving these, mythical ideologies, and people do believe them. And this is where now the white man is going to win the battle if we are not able to win him mentally, academically. That is where the battle is. It's a warfare of the mind, that we have to be able to rid ourselves of mental slavery, as Marcus Garvey said, because a lot of the battle is not the one that is waged on the streets. It's a battle of the mind, right? What we think, what they say we ought to believe in when that is not true, the propagandas that we embrace. This is where the fight begins. It's not about just going out in the streets. Sometimes, yes, we have to go out in the streets and we have to wage our warfare. But the warfare, the primary warfare begins in the mind. And just like the Caribbean person who was able to stand up to that white person and say that, he's saying that he's cocky. The white man is saying the Caribbean person is cocky, but the Caribbean person understands who he is. Who he or she is, and they don't like that. And where does that start from? From the mind. From the mind. If you can outpace Europeans in terms of the mind games that they play on us, then we would have already won a huge part of that, the game of the struggles of the war. Now we're here to say, who owns Caribbean oil, gas, sugar, cocoa, bauxite, timber, fish, asphalt? Absolutely. The Americans, right? And we know that they're the ones who largely own the region. And that's what we're saying when we are now about to enter into independence. Many of us will be celebrating independence from Great Britain in August and beyond. Right? We have to bear these things in mind when we are at these galas and we are jumping up and stuff like that. Are we really free? Does Britain, because Jamaica has the king as the head of state, does that mean that Jamaica is controlled by Great Britain? Absolutely not. And that is what you have to understand. It's just on paper. And some things on paper are not real. And that is what you and I have to understand. It's just on paper. When they tell us that the economy has grown 20% or 9%, and you're looking at the lives of the people, it's just on paper. It's not real. And lots of things that we see on paper, in books, are not real. And that is why we come on these channels to sort of try to make sense out of the nonsensical world in which we live. Make sure you're liking the live and you're sharing the live with as many people so that we can get more people on the live. When the transatlantic slave trade ended, the slaves got freedom and the slave masters received major financial compensation. This is a critical point. The fact that the slave masters were able to receive compensation for their keeping us in slavery, in bondage, and taking away a lot of our economic development, that is something that people are debating, and it will never stop being debated. Okay? Can you imagine if Europeans were to pay Africa all of the money that they have lost all through those productive years, hundreds of years, right? How many centuries? Could be about 4 centuries, okay, or more. They would not be able to pay us. Right? Europeans would not be able to pay us for all of what we put into the building of the West, what we call here now the West. We are in more modern times, but the empire mindsets to protect their own. Yeah, modern does not mean that we're wealthy. No, modern does not mean that we're free. That's what I should say. Modern does not mean that we are free. In fact, I think now with all of this age of technology, I think we're now more enslaved than we think we are, right? Because there's so much rubbish online now. There's so much chattering and loud talkings that we're not hearing these important facts that we need to be discussing, okay? And this is now where we are more enslaved vis-a-vis the internet. Now, the internet can free us. It's a tool. It can either free us or it can enslave us, but we are using it. The majority of people are using the internet as a way of enslaving their minds. So these interests haven't changed. Guards have changed. All right. So what we see now are more black faces, more Indian faces, more whatever faces. But we are the interests, as Sadek is saying, the economic interests have not changed. And that is why nothing in the Caribbean region is changing that much, right? It's not changing that much, or at the rate that we would like to see it change. Paul Bonin is saying Jamaica better off British. Well, the British is not, was not going to help us. Hey, Trevor, yeah, the British is not going to help us. The British, we are neither better off with the British or, without them. I think people are suggesting that under the British, Jamaica had a better organized society. The society follow the rules and order. I don't know what's wrong with black people or African people, and we have to look at that. Why are we so disorderly? Why do we like disorder so much? And when we go to predominantly European countries, we conform. We conform to standards, we conform to rules, we conform to order, but yet in our respective countries, like Jamaica, predominantly African-based society, we don't like law and order. We don't like rules. So we have a lot of problems, and that is one of the reasons why we are not able to grow too. So yes, under the British, Jamaica was certainly a more organized and more lawful country, but definitely not better in the sense of economic prosperity, right? Educationally, we were not better off too. But Paul Bunyan is saying anything better than American occupation. Well, the fact is, do we want any occupation at all? I don't think any occupation is good, right? Whether it is British occupation. And remember now, what we're seeing happening in the world is that these empires don't just work by themselves. So whether we have, it's the British or the American, somebody else is going to help somebody else, right? So the French will help the American, the British will help the Americans, and that's exactly what they do. Because even though they might not like each other, the British might not like the French and vice versa, but they work together so that they can maintain and keep their power active. That's what we have to also understand. And we must bear that in mind. So even though with the war on Iran now, it's not the United States fighting Iran by itself. Right? It's getting help from Britain, it's getting help from France, it's getting help from its so-called partners in crime, if you will. So we have to understand that this is not just one empire that we're fighting against an entire system that is designed to keep black people down, or African people of African descent down. So we have to look at that. After World War II, Britain's, welcome to the chat, WHZ. After World War II, Britain sold the Caribbean and Latin America to USA when we were thinking we were sovereign countries after independence. I believe that 100%. And even they didn't sell it over to, but they were able to have their treaties and who would do what and who is responsible for what, right? And that is what happens. So even in Iran also, let us say the US, which it has the support of England and France, what they do, they say, if I take over the territory, you get this and I'll get this, I'll take. So they share the island or the land, right? They share the land amongst themselves. That is what they do, right? And that is what they've always done. W is saying the leaders of the Caribbean and Latin America have been lying to its citizens, not telling them that Britain and USA behavior was not toward independence, but toward neo-colonialism. And that is the crux of the matter. We could end the live here now, because that is the point, right? It was not about independence. It was about neo-colonialism. In fact, W.E. Du Bois is on record saying that World War II was not about what they tell us World War II was about. It was Europe dividing up the entire world into regions that it wanted to control. Regions in Africa, regions in the Caribbean, in Latin America, as WHZ is saying. And that is true, right? And even today, right now in Asia, the war there and in Middle East, right there in Iran, they are dividing up. In fact, I'm hearing people talking about the fact that the Iranian territory is about to be divided up and to be remapped. They want to make a new map of Iran, where they're not going to do, just like they did in Africa, right? Remember, in Africa is not the same continent we knew it was years ago, right? Africa was divided up into different territories for the different colonial domination, okay? And that is what we have to understand. So every war is dividing up the world into different territories for control. I am sick of puppet politicians, yes. And who put them into power, though? We are the ones who continue to support them, and it's something that we have to stop doing. And Superbat is saying, Mandro is saying, Haiti, my home country, was screwed up from the start. Yes, it started out very well, but Haiti eventually went into, being captured also. And that is what we have to understand, that our country might have started out very well in terms of their having the right. Some people do have the right intention. Let us also be very truthful to ourselves. We can't say everybody, all our leaders are bad and they all want us to not succeed. But it can start off well, just like America too, with the Constitution and all that stuff. But if we are not vigilant, if people are not vigilant to keep their politicians to the fire, then things are not going to end well. And most of us, if truth be told, when things are going well, we just simply go back and we sleep, right? Everything is working. I'm going to party. I'm going to have a good time, right? And then we're not vigilant enough to watch what is happening and to make sure that laws are being maintained and upheld and enforced. As a result of that, we find ourselves in the position that we are finding. Yeah, thank you so much, and thank you for joining. Make sure you share the live. We are here to share our knowledge with each other. That's what we're here to, because we're not getting the truth from the mainstream media, neither from independent media. So we're here now to have real discussions. France needs to pay Jean-Pierre Boyer biggest favor. Yeah, France owes Haiti a lot of money, right? And the United States too, right? The United States also should be paying Haiti lots of reparations. Do you know that was it in 1914 or before, that the United States went to Haiti and just took out all its money and its gold, right, and all its precious resources and brought it to the City Bank of New York? Okay, so the United States owes Haiti lots of money. We should sell our products internationally for gold, not worthless USD. Had we done so, we would currently have massive gold reserves that would have increased in value significantly. And you're right. What is happening though, the dollar, who controls the monetary system? The US. Right? Even in China, even though China is a superpower, as some of you say, and has a lot of influence in the world, but when we look at the monetary system, the US controls it. Okay? And that is why we can't sell it in our own local currencies, or even in a currency, let us say the Chinese currency. Trevor saying, we are far more enslaved now. We are far more enslaved. Right now, Google is considering to change its entire search engine to be entirely run by AI, which would curate information and compound the narrative echo chambers more. And by the way, Trevor, if you're Googling something now, let us say we want to Google something about anything, right? What comes up first? AI filters like a summary of what you're researching, and it will say it's either true or it's not true. So already Google is filtering our information. And if you are going to read AI and think AI is going to be the truthful information, you're going to say, well, what that person is saying is a lie or it's negative. And instead of researching for yourself, AI would have already done the research for you. So already they might be expanding the scale to which they do it, but they're already doing so. Soup is saying they are allies in geopolitics. They are. And I'm happy, we have much to learn from the Haitians. I think they are perhaps some of the most informed, or if not the most informed people in the Caribbean. Why? Because Haiti has been dealing with this from the 19th century. They have been dealing with these geopolitical, ramifications and contradictions. Contradictions, that's the word. Contradictions. Everything in geopolitics, represent contradictions. So yes, Mr. Super Batman Bro, they are allies in geopolitics. They are allies in geopolitics. So when you're going around and thinking that, this is winning or that is not winning, they are allies, okay? When we look now at the WHZ saying, white supremacy is fighting to stop on top, to stay on top. Yeah, to stay on top. Yeah, and they are. In fact, there was I told you that you should go and look at this guy's video. He's from Angola. His name is Gabriel. I'm always forgetting his last name. Gabriel. Anyway, he said that he was a part of a satanic secret society, right? And he says every meeting, what they're planning, their major agenda is to depopulate the earth. So they want to depopulate us. So they want to get rid of a lot of us. Why? Because they can control us more. You can have more control when you have fewer people on the earth, right? You have less control when you have a lot of people on the earth. So you have about 7, 8 billion of us on the earth now. So if they can reduce us to 1/3, but he said that this guy who was in a very top secret society, he was a part of a top secret society, he says that they want to reduce more the populations of Asia and Africa, right? Their quest is to reduce the populations of Asia and Africa. That's what he says. His name is Gabriel Estevao. Gabriel Estevao, and he's from Angola. And he was telling us, he gave many, many testimonies on the internet. Go and listen to him, right? Because some of us think that this is conspiracy and we're not talking about what is happening in the world, but we're actually talking about what is happening behind the scenes, which we need to be aware of. Now, we talk, W. Statex is saying that why do whites never claim to be pink? The thing about it, Statex, as I've said, we are all what? Shades of brown. That's what the science has said, right? So we have from dark brown to light brown. So they are brown too, right? But if we want to see superficially, they're pink. Yeah, we can say some of them are pink, right? So yeah, so that is, but we are we're really different shades of brown, including the Asians, Europeans, and Africans. We're just different shades because we came from a human race. Okay, we belong. All of us came from Africa, as we say. Africa is the motherland of civilization. That is true. Trevor is saying people make me laugh talking about independence, but still have governor generals, right? QCs and more in their country, nuclear. And that is something that is very good that you're raising a good point that you have raised here, Trevor, because the same people who are talking that they're anti-colonial and they want the British guy to go, they're the same ones who are QCs. They're QCs and they're King's Council. KCs is what you call them now. They're now KCs because it's now king, right? The King of England. They want to have his titles, right? And yet they're the same ones who tell us that we need to move away from British colonialism. So talk about the contradictions. Talk about the contradictions even among many of our leaders, many of our scholars. They are not willing to let go because they benefit from the system. Right? They benefit from the system, and we know that. So that's a very good point you're raising, Trevor. Status is saying the second hot sun hits them, they're pink, at least those who are used to it. Correct. And you're correct. When it does, they have that sort of shade. They do. Super Batman Bro is saying, see what happened to the natives and the South American. Absolutely. And to know that a civilization came over and wiped out an entire group of people, a group of civilization, not only people, but civilizations, right? Is something that is going to be studied for a very long, long time. It's amazing. Trevor is saying Trump even made statements about transforming Iran into 15-minute cities, etc., for tourism. That's what it's about. That's what it's about. It's not about democracy. They're trying to implement democracy and to free the people of Iran. What they're trying to do is to colonize them. Just like we are colonized. That's what we're seeing here. In the Caribbean, we are also colonized. So we should be watching what is happening. The war on Iran should be instructive for us as a people, or to us as a people, and let us understand that these people don't mean us well. But why is it that we see these things happening, and when the United States sends like some ship here to the Caribbean, they're here to protect us, and we are on the side of the United States? Why do we continue to think that when we see literally what is happening in the other parts of the world, they're actually colonizing the world rather than trying to free the world, right? They're trying to enslave us and they're trying to kill us. Talk about depopulation. That is happening every day, right? Yes, Gabriel Estevao. Yeah, I'm going to. So we have it. Do you think that BRICS is an opportunity for diverse relations, or would Trump cut the throat of any Caribbean leader who dares to entertain closer ties with them? Now, we're saying, and I think that the Superman Man Bro made the point that they are allies in geopolitics. So even the ones who seem to be opposing the Western system, they're a part of a system that, that is a part of the same system. It's very, very complicated, and it's something that it doesn't make sense logically. You would think if they say that they are anti-Western, that they would want to free us. But most people who love money, most of these people who are either at the East or the West, they love money and they love power. And that is what we say, power corrupts. So they don't want to free us. I think that what we need, Stadex, we need to have our own systems. We don't need to have these large international bodies, because once you have these, like the United Nations and all of these, international corporations or organizations, there's always some corruption going on. When they're representing hundreds and thousands of people, we need to go back to the days of Africa and basic life, where people were involved in their own communities and they built, right? And they built their communities. When we're thinking about a sector representing hundreds of thousands of people, there is a lot of room for corruption, which normally is. I don't trust BRICS. I don't think that they are going to bring us anything different from the West. They're all a part of the WEF, the World Economic Forum, the United Nations. They belong to the same organizations, right? And I'm not saying they might not have good ideas, and a lot of us were trapped by good ideas. But when we look at the connectedness of the world, right, we have to just look at ideas and intentions, and to look at the system. And the system that we have now is not a system that is going to be tenable. It's untenable. Remember too, when we look at slavery, you had the French, right? You had the Spanish, you had the Dutch, you had the British. And among them all, they were saying that this one was the better, and this one better slavery, was better to its people or better to the slaves. But at the end of the day, were they all good? No, they were evil, right? And we just need to get rid of all of them, right? One might have been a little bit better than the other, but it doesn't mean they were all practicing slavery. And that is what we have to understand. And what we're living under is a system of economic slavery. We might not be living under physical chattel slavery, but we're living under a system of economic slavery, which we need to call a spade a spade. Gabriel, yeah, this is the gentleman from Angola that I would encourage all of you to go and watch his videos, right? Because this thing is real, right? What he's talking about is real, and we cannot continue now to be just be dumbfounded about what is happening behind the scenes in the world, all right? And some people are risking their lives because he could be killed. When you reveal these things, you can be killed, right? But you don't want to listen to these things, do you? Or many of us don't. Now, we have here, look at every time your dollar drops and more expats come in, and the minute your dollar tries to stabilize, they complain and run to the next cheap country. Exactly what happens. They call it tourism. Exactly what happens. Yeah, and then we have to do everything to submit to their what do you call it now, demands. And this is exactly what is happening in the Caribbean, right? This is exactly what is happening in the Caribbean. Now, we will never have sovereignty, we will never have sovereignty or end up like Cuba, plus our so-called educated sell-out class loves the oppression. Envy not your oppressor, Proverbs 3, verse 31. Yeah, and this is the whole point, that everybody wants power. And power, what? Corrupts, and it corrupts absolutely. Okay, so that absolute power corrupts absolutely. So that is what is happening in our Caribbean. We are not free. We think we are free, but we are not free at all. And we need to go back and we need to look at some. But let's look at some other factors of our independence and the fact that we are not free. Now, colonies were designed primarily to extract wealth for European countries, right? And I think that we know that. Sugar, coffee, bananas, bauxite, and other commodities flowed outward while profits accumulated abroad. And that's what we have to look at. Trevor talked about tourism, right? So tourism, they go there and they create these hotels, right? And you have the clients who go there and they're luxurious hotels, right? And they make millions, if not billions of dollars. And the money does not remain in these countries, right? The wealth goes out of the country. So tourism is another form of slavery, right? It's another form. And if you speak to the workers in the industry, they will tell you, they will let you know. You know, the other day there was a video of a Jamaican worker at one of the hotels in Jamaica. And there was a sort of conflict between an African American and that particular young miss, who, when she was asked for a glass of, was it alcohol, whatever, and she brought it to her, and I guess whatever reason, there was a fracas, there was some sort of misunderstanding, and the fight was whatever. And, I think the girl lost her job, even though she was not in the wrong, because the tourist actually hit her first for nothing. So we're seeing that, yes, this is also another form of slavery, tourism, the tourism sector. Political and economic decisions were made largely in London, Paris, Madrid, or Amsterdam. And we know that political decisions are not made, or economic decisions are not made in Jamaica, not made in Trinidad, are not made in Barbados, are not made in Guyana. All right, these decisions are made in Washington, D.C., in the city of London. Okay, they're not made in Jamaica. Okay, so people who think that the IMF and Andrew Holness can do whatever he wants with the IMF, or when the money was sent for the disaster, right? People are thinking that when, after Hurricane Melissa and funds were sent to Jamaica to help the people, that it's Andrew Holness's money or the country's money. It's not. It's not Andrew Holness's money or the country's money. It is the funds of NGOs and these people who control the society. The same thing happened in Haiti after the earthquake in 2010. And our people will just not wake up. Nothing will spark the mind to think. And that is why we are in the situation. So you think that the same thing they did in Haiti was not going to be done in Jamaica? You think the fact that they diverted all of those millions of dollars that were sent to rebuild Haiti, do you think that they were going to send money to Jamaica and use it for what they said that it was tasked with doing? That means you're not thinking. Okay? Now, the critical question is, did colonial economic structures disappear after independence, or were they preserved under new management? Right? They were not. They were preserved. They were preserved. We are not independent. Okay? Now, growth of labor movements, we can look at the growth of the labor movements and the anti-colonial struggles in the 1940s to 1960s. And we had that struggle. So the slaves, well, not the slaves, but the people, the working classes in the 1940s to 1960s, they wanted true liberation. They realized that they were not free. And they understood that slavery, and well, yes, they thank God the fact that chattel slavery was finished, because that was horrific, right? So they were not in any illusion that chattel slavery was something nice, but they realized that they were not getting the economic prosperity. They weren't achieving the economic prosperity that they had yearned for and hoped that freedom would have given them. But what happened is that you had people like the Bustamantes of Jamaica who went and said, okay, we're going to fight for you. And what did they end up doing? They ended up according with a treaty, right? Signing a treaty between the former colonial masters so that the system would not be affected, would not be impacted. Okay? And that's exactly what they did. Now, emergence of leaders such as Norman Manley, Eric Williams, Grantley Adams, Forbes, Burnham, and Cheddy Jagan, right? These were the guys who represented the working classes. Okay, and they did. Some of them did their best, but at the end of the day, as Norman Manley said, that was not the end of it. I think some of us thought that that was the end of what they had started, and that's the problem that we find ourselves in. We thought independence in the 1960s was real independence, and that was the end of the struggle. Okay, and it was not. It was not. It was just the beginning. Okay, demands for self-government and national sovereignty intensified under these during this time. Independence movements gained popular support throughout the region. Okay, and many citizens believed political independence would also lead to economic independence, but that was not the case. We did not get the economic independence. That in fact we became more dependent on U.S. corporations. Okay, so while many Caribbean territories were growing, including Jamaica in the 1960s, but the economic growth was not inclusive. It was just for a selected few. And it is still the same system that has remained in place. Okay, the United States emerged as the dominant global power after World War II. Britain's economic and military influence declined. So there is no way that if there's a war between Washington and England, London, that London would win that battle, particularly for the Caribbean territories. So Britain knew that. Britain understood that, and they entered into a pact to have us, taken over by the Americans, which we saw lots of corporations coming into our countries like United Fruit Company, and they took over our infrastructures, tourism, and everything, and they started to run our countries. Okay, that's exactly what happened. Now, Washington increasingly viewed the Caribbean as part of its strategic sphere of influence. Okay, and we saw in the first article I read to you that from the 19th century, Washington was involved in the Caribbean, the building of the Panama Canal. The fact that, remember now, that when the United States was building the Panama Canal, many of the countries in the Caribbean, the Anglo-speaking Caribbean countries, territories, were still under British rulership. Yet still they sent their people to Panama to help to build the Panama Canal. Okay, and many of the citizens were actually exploited in that sort of setup, in that sort of arrangement. Now, the Cold War transformed the region into a geopolitical battleground, and we saw that with the rise of Cuba and its revolution, and we saw how that really, is winding up. We knew what happened. Jamaica also was trying to be socialist, so we see the examples of the Guatemala and what happened there. Cuba in 1961 at the height of the revolution and onward, the Dominican Republic in 1965, Jamaica in the 1970s, and Grenada in 1983. And we know how all of those ended, right? That governments were toppled in these countries. We had the government of Guatemala toppled in 1953, I think. Cuba, of course, we know that the revolution, many death threats on the life of Fidel Castro, right? And we see what is happening now. The United States is really determined to overthrow that country as we speak. Dominican Republic, they also had a major revolution, uprising, I shouldn't say revolution, but uprising here in the 1960s because of U.S. influence and its domination of Dominican economic life. And Dominicans rose up and said that enough was enough. But the CIA squashed that and brought in the leader whom they wanted from the beginning. Okay, Grenada, and we don't have to speak about Maurice Bishop and what they did there. So we're seeing where all of these countries tried to move independently of U.S. dominion and domination, U.S. imperialism, but they were all squashed, right? And that is why many Caribbean leaders today they're afraid to rise up against the United States because they understand that they do not make independent decisions in their respective countries. And if they ever attempt to do so, they know the consequences that will follow. Make sure you're liking the live and you're sending the live to many people so we can have this very necessary, important discussion. Critics argue that while European colonialism weakened, American influence expanded dramatically. I repeat that. Critics argue that while European colonialism weakened, American influence expanded dramatically. So we see the multinational corporations and the economic control from the 1960s to present time. We don't have to talk about the World Bank, the IMF, okay, and the sort of the dominant what do you call it now, rule that they have over us, right? We have to do whatever the IMF says, okay, don't we? Now, Trevor is saying, I remember that situation with the girl who lost her job. The crazy part is many people dragged her for standing up for herself. That says a lot about people's minds. Yeah, right? Even though she wasn't wrong, but when you're in the tourism sector, you are wrong. You are wrong if you should stand up for your rights, because the tourist is what is bringing the dollars, and they don't care about the local rights and their labor laws, and they don't care, right? They can always replace that worker, right? Super Batman Bro is saying tourism is slavery, and many people are blind to the wolves in sheep clothing. Yes, because one of the things about why we are so much enslaved to, we like to go back to the different countries like the DR or Jamaica or Barbados or Grenada, and we like to look at these lovely structures, the hotels. They look very nice, right? The luxurious hotels, and that sort of beautify our landscape, and we think that these things belong to us, right? This is superficial thinking. We think that these beautiful structures belong to us when they don't. And they're not yielding money for us. They're just beautifying the landscape, but they're not necessarily building the country or the economy up. You're right. Super Batman Bro is saying they've been using Haiti. They've been using Haiti, right? They've been using Haiti as a training ground for Western occupation. And he is right. You are right here. And you are making a lot of deep points that many times we're not getting from our English-speaking people. They are using Haiti. Haiti is a blueprint, and Jamaica is too, Jamaica to a lesser extent than Haiti, but Jamaica is also being used as a blueprint for what lies ahead. So when Jamaica is saying, oh, we are the capital of the Caribbean, capital in terms of what? Of U.S. domination and U.S. control, okay? We need to get our acts together, okay? Andrew, there is a divide, and soon there will be a clear line in the sand. They will shut you up, exile, or end you. No need for the KKK, and the KKK comes in so many colors now, and they are slaves too. And you are right. And you know why you're right? If you look at the NARA, and we have to talk about that in another session, the NARA that was passed in Jamaica, and all of a sudden we have this Major Anthony Anderson, who was the ambassador, Jamaica's ambassador to Washington, right? And all of a sudden, when that law has been passed in Jamaica's parliament, he's been sent back home to direct it. And it was like the director of the army in Jamaica. So we know where that is going. Right? And that guy's a rough guy. Now, we have Super Batman Bro is saying, so you're right, Trevor. Don't forget they pay the oligarchs in the Caribbean islands high-class elites. They do. And that is why they have to do what they are told to do. Well, they don't have to do it, but that's why they do it, because they are paid handsomely, as Super Batman Bro is saying. Now, Super Batman Bro is saying also, don't forget Grenada. I want you to invite everybody from Haiti, Super Batman Bro, because you are making some and the Haitians are very good in terms of understanding what imperialism is or is not. And we want more of them on our lives so that they can educate us more, all of us, because we have been living in this so-called, oh, we speak English and we're okay and we're better off than what is happening in Haiti, not knowing that we are now being pushed into that direction. Also, don't forget Grenada Revolution, that the USA imperial ended in brutality fashion. They did. It was a horrific. It was a horrific. It ended up in a very horrific manner. You're right. You're right. Trevor saying they are going to take back our lands by outpricing us, which and send us behind back to Africa. I don't think I don't think they want to send us back to Africa, by the way, because they're doing the same thing in Africa, and that's the whole thing. We don't even need to go back to Africa because whatever they're doing here, they're also doing in Africa, and that is why we had the people like the guy from Burkina Faso and some others in Niger that they're trying to sort of fight back against what the U.S. Is doing and the Western people, the Western oligarchs. But we must understand that, we, unless we're going back to Africa to fight against what the West is doing there, going back to Africa is not going to save us. And I hear people talking about they're going back to Africa. If you are not willing to fight, okay, and to fight against European imperialism, going back to Africa is not going to solve the problem, because the same realities that we're living here in the Caribbean are the realities that they're living back in Africa. So yes, if you are a military person and you like to fight and you will fight back and all of that, you're there to educate people and all of that. Yeah, by the way, you can go to Africa by all means, right? But don't think that you're going to go to Africa and you're going to be free from Western colonialism. That is a sort of simplistic thinking that I'm wondering when people talk like that, if they're really thinking. Okay? And many talk like that, by the way, until they go there and they see that it's not what they think it is. And don't get me wrong, Africa is a lovely continent, but just like the Caribbean is a lovely region, but the fact is that it is not to be romanticized. Okay? We must not romanticize our history and romanticize our region, which many of us do. They are going to take back, I thought I read that already, Trevor. Let me read your other comment. Yes, but they will do it in a soft way, so we will have the illusion that we are liberated. They won't force it. I see what you're saying, yes. And Trevor, you're right. And that's why many of us are already going back to Africa. Well, I shouldn't say many, but some of us are already going back to Africa, thinking that we are going to run away. I even see Black Americans leaving to come to the Caribbean and go to other places. And you might feel free for a while. You're going to feel free because the mind has a way of playing tricks on our heads, right? We have a way of fooling ourselves. So for a while, you might feel that you're free until the reality hits you, right? So we have to be very careful of that. Now, Trevor is saying, as it stands, the Pan-Africanists are falling for it and paving this way. It's interesting. I'm happy you said that, Trevor, because some people say that I'm CIA operative because I speak against some of what these Pan-Africans are doing. I am not. But I want to say, it is my opinion. This is not now verifiable facts. It's my opinion that a lot of these so-called Pan-Africanists, not all of them, some of them are genuine people, like the Mr. Pereiras and other people, but there are other people who are just controlled by the CIA as well. I think a lot of our Black studies at the universities are controlled by CIA agents, and they are romanticizing our history, misinforming us, and simplifying our people and the way of thinking that we can just run and do these things and all of a sudden we are going to be in a free world. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. We have to work hard for whatever freedoms that we are yearning for, right? It's going to take a mighty job, right? And that is what we have to say. It's my belief, Trevor, that is controlled. And you're talking about somebody who also taught at a Black institution in the United States. I understand how it's operated. I know that it is not real. A lot of what you see there is just not real, right? It's just not real. And many of us do it for money, and we just do what we're told, and we just, go with the status quo, right? But when you look at the system, you peel the system, you realize that the system is controlled by another force, and these are not our friends. And I will say too, having also taught at a predominantly black institution, university in the United States, when you look behind the scenes and the power structure and the people who control the committees and control sometimes the departments, some of them, you look behind the scenes and look at who control them. Okay, and you will realize that it's what much of what meets the eyes are, it's sad, but it is true, right? It is sad, but it is the truth. All right, that it is not what it seems to be. Okay, yeah. So that is what we have to do. We very good conversation, and we are going to continue with some other points that I have here. Now, so the foreign corporations maintained significant control over mining, tourism, banking, agriculture, and energy. Okay, and that's what the corporations do. So notice these are the very important aspects. Like I have a video that I'm going to show you sometimes where this it's a white American who was suggesting that there's lots of oil in Haiti, lots of oil in Haiti. And we should not be surprised, and Cuba as well. And I think Mr. Corbyn did say that to us. We had a live where Mr. Corbyn told us that, in fact, that there is oil, in Cuba as well as in Haiti, and gold. And this was said by a white American, right, on a major news channel. And I want to bring that up in another video so you can watch it and you can, digest it more. Many Caribbean economies remained dependent on foreign investment. So that's what they're telling us, your governments. Oh, we need to have direct foreign investments, what they call it, FID or whatever they call it. Yeah, that's what they depend on. It's almost like we cannot survive without, foreign investments. And what they mean by foreign investments is that these corporations come in, buy up your major assets, and then they leave you poverty stricken, right? All in the name of foreign investment, okay? Profits frequently flowed abroad rather than remaining within local economies, right? And I hear them talking about agriculture too, and we have to develop our agricultural base. And it is true that we have to develop our agricultural base because we need to produce and to grow what we eat and eat what we grow. However, they're talking about agribusiness where they're going to invite the people like the Bill Gates and these people down there, and then they buy off our major, farmlands, as what is happening in the United States, and control them, right? It's not about, distributing land to farmers and having the local farmers to produce and to get food to our markets. Okay, so we have to watch out for that. Tourism became a major industry, often dominated by foreign hotel chains and investors, right? And we are seeing that. We're seeing that. Look at Barbados. The same thing is happening in Barbados, right? What do Barbadians own as Jamaicans? What do they own? Okay, what do they own in their very country? Okay, we don't own these lands. We don't own these hotels, right? We don't even own the money that they earn. As we said, the money is sent abroad in tax havens where they're not even taxed. Look at the roads. They don't even maintain the roads that lead to their hotels, right? And they earn billions of dollars in these countries without paying any taxes, right? All in the name of foreign investments. And people in these countries think that they're free. People in the Caribbean think that they are free. Now, who truly owns and controls the commanding heights of Caribbean economies? The IMF, the World Bank, and structural adjustment programs of the 1970s to 1990s, right? They're the ones who control. So they tell you about your debt crisis. You have to manage your debt. And all you pay, well, look at Jamaica. Jamaica spent the majority of the 21st century, a large chunk of the beginning of the 21st century, Jamaica has spent its time paying down debt. And what's happening down there? A collapse of the entire country. A collapse of the entire country economically. And do you know that as much as Jamaicans, because we can be very, double-faced, and sometimes we don't think what we say, but people are saying that they are the capital of the Caribbean, and there was a survey the other day, and 74% of Jamaicans said that it would like to leave. The same people who are saying that they are the capital, Jamaica is the capital of the Caribbean, 74% of the citizens there suggest that they would like to immigrate to another country. They don't want to stay there. Yet Jamaica is the capital of the Caribbean. Now, make that make sense. Make that make sense. Now, governments borrowed heavily from the international institutions like the International Monetary Fund that we've just, the World Bank, right, and other institutions. Critics argue that these programs reduce state ownership, encourage privatization, so everything is privatized, your schools, your hospitals, right? Everything, your water companies, okay? Your electric companies are all privatized, and you have to pay high bills, limited economic sovereignty. Okay? But we don't want to hear these, We don't want to hear these. We want to hear that we are the cultural capital. We are doing well. Right? That is what we want to hear, but that is not true. Okay? Now, we have here, supporters argue that these measures stabilized economies and prevented financial collapse. That's what they will tell you. All right? That we had to do this because if we had not done it, then we would have collapsed. But is that true? Do you think that if we had not paid these IMF loans and, reduced our debt to 50% of GDP, do you think we would have collapsed? Or do you think they are just tricking us? Super Batman Bro is saying, that's why I always study the Haitian Revolution. Absolutely. And the Cuban Revolution. Yes, Haiti does have oil and uranium mines and gold too. You're right. And, when he's saying this, that he always studies the Haitian Revolution and the Cuban Revolution, he's right. Because in those two Caribbean revolutions, you will see all the problems that are afflicting our world. I'm telling you, go and read even 3 books by 3 different authors on the Cuban Revolution and on the Haitian Revolution. And you are going to see all the problems that are afflicting our Caribbean society in depth. And you say, my God, all of us are interconnected. Okay? Yes. Faze is saying we're just resting. Yeah, we're just resting. We just love what, I think we just like to say we're cool, we're irie, right? And we're not trying to think our way out of poverty and out of imperialism. Super Batman Bro is saying Gilbert Biggio. Yeah, this is the oligarch in Haiti. I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing his name correctly. Industrial companies are a parasite in the capital of Port-au-Prince and US. I understand that he is probably one of the, if not the wealthiest oligarch in the Caribbean. People don't understand that Haiti has some of the wealthiest oligarchs in the Caribbean. And a lot of the oligarchs, the Haitian oligarchs, control a lot of tourism in the Dominican Republic, right? A country that, pretends as if it hates Haitians. At the same time, Haitian oligarchs, who are, of course, the Arab descent, the white, Haitians and other, people from other cultures and heritage, they control a lot of the wealth here in the Dominican Republic. Now, how could that happen? And this is what you have to understand. When we look at the interconnectedness of these oligarchs, so yes, you might have Jamaicans against Trinidad and Barbados against whatever, but at the end of the day, the oligarchs are interconnected. And then among ourselves, we end up fighting against each other while they are connecting their wealth, and they don't want to lose their wealth either. So we need to get our acts together. And he's right. Trevor is saying, I say the same thing about any place in the Caribbean. Open a highway from all countries in the Caribbean to each other and to Europe, America, etc., and see everyone goes to the latter. And you're correct. By the way, do you see that Barbados and Guyana, what do you guys think about that, have now they've entered into an agreement where all you need now to travel to both countries, whether you're from Barbados to Guyana or Guyana to Barbados, is a national ID card. So I guess you don't have to use your passport. Anybody from Barbados, can you verify that for me? But that's what I read, that Mia Mottley and Ali have signed some agreement in which Barbadians and Guyanese can move freely back and forth from either countries, only with their national ID. But I think that national ID is going to be something that is subject to what? To control, right? And surveillance. That's my thing. Maybe I'm reading into it too much. But that is good if they're able to travel back and forth. Let's see how that works. Now, Thazi is saying, honestly, we were brought here to be slaves, and that has not changed. And he's right. We were brought here to be slaves, and that has not changed. We are not free. We have no military, and we are debt-ridden and dependent. And that summarizes it, right? And I think, sadly, the slaves who were brought here and they were shackled, right? They were not happy with their lot. They weren't happy with their lot. But surprisingly, fast forward to the 21st century, we are quite happy to be slaves. Why? Is it because they knew that they were slaves? Because of course they had shackles around their feet and they couldn't move. They were not mobile. All right, they were mobile, but they were controlled movement, right? But the fact is that we now think because we're mobile, we can go from country to country, right? We think we're free when we're not free, right? Now, well, we're free to an extent. Let's not now be, we're free to an extent, but we're not free in the full sense. We're not fully free. Let's put it that way. Jamaica might be the cultural ambassador of the Caribbean, but definitely not the cultural capital. TNT is way too diverse. I missed your thing. TNT is way too diverse for an almost homogenous island like Jamaica to be its cultural capital. I don't think Jamaica is as homogenous as many people think. I think Jamaica is quite diverse too. But yeah, I agree with you that Trinidad has a much larger ethnic population of Indians and some other ethnic groups. But Jamaica is pretty much a diverse country in the sense of all peoples are there, not in the magnitude, as you're saying, as Trinidad would have, like a lot of Indians, right? Because the major ethnic groups in Trinidad are really ethnically Indians and Black people, and you have spatterings of other people, minorities, which Jamaica does have spatterings of other minorities there too. Yeah, so it depends on when you say it's diverse. It's pretty diverse too. Pushing for true liberation will mean running off the plantation and losing the titles and mindset that came with it. Why fight to run when you can fight to become a better slave that is favored? Right. I think it's just the way that we love to be. One of the things about us now, we speak against our colonial masters, right? And that's one of the things about Black people too, or African peoples. We will speak against the colonial masters, against white people, right? At the end of the day, we want to be close to them. We want to live closer to them. So we want to be in America. We want to be in Canada. We want to live in Europe, right? And that is what we like to do, So we want to be closer with them and closer to them. So we're finding ourselves living in a sort of, we are contradictory people. Yes, all of the oligarchs are connected. Yes, they are connected, right? They are connected. In other words, the YouTube man runs things, right? The white man. Is it the white man? Right, the white man run things. I think that Barbados Guyana arrangement has to, is it for with the the digital ID. Yeah, it will have to go. I think that's what it's about. I think that they're just saying they can come. I think that it's the development of the experimentation with the digital IDs. And that because they know they can't just come and tell us that they're going to just impose a digital ID upon the Caribbean citizens. So they have to do it as a way of, uniting the Caribbean. And I think that is what they're doing. Yes, all you need is your ID card. Let's see if that means the digital ID with the chip and the mine, all of your data, and it would also be spearheading rather another agenda. I think it is. I think that it's that. I think that is what they're trying to implement and enforce. I said almost homogenous. Yes, almost homogenous. Yes, but it's not as homogenous as we think it is. Quite one of the reasons I think Jamaica culture also appeals to people is that it really lives in harmony with the people that it has there, right? So even though you think it's homogenous, it's not as homogenous as people. And people who go there who have never been there realize that it is not that homogenous as they think it is. It's much more diverse than we think it really is. I'm a Trinidadian. I saw Indians and Chinese when I went to Jamaica to study. Jamaica is not as homogenous as it's assumed to be. You're right. I think many people, there was a guy from Brazil who I know very well, right? And when he met me first, he was asking me about Jamaica. So he was saying to me, well, white people can't go to Jamaica because Jamaica will not like white people because Jamaica is predominantly black, which we are predominantly black. But the fact is that I told him that that's not the reality. And last year he happened to have gone there and he called me because he hadn't spoken with me for years. And he called me. Well, he first emailed me because he didn't have my phone number, but he emailed me, sent me an email, and he said, Andrew, I could not believe that Jamaica was as diverse. I didn't know that you had that amount of diversity. And I said, yes, we are not as diverse as Trinidad. That is for sure, right? So you're right that Jamaica is not as diverse as Trinidad and Guyana are, but it is a pretty diverse country. And the Caribbean as a whole, I would say the Caribbean region, because we were the center of British colonialism and French colonialism. So even in Haiti, right? Even in Haiti, you have diversity. And people just tend to look at the working class Haitians and think that this just represents the Haitian society. But the Haitian society is much diverse than we sometimes think it is. I suspected that this would be, yes, an introduction to the digital ID. I think so. That's what I'm thinking. I think that it's a very good way of introducing, and they're doing it very well, that we're uniting and we want our Caribbean people to travel to each other's countries without passports. So that's what I think. We don't know yet, but that is what I'm sort of assuming. Trevor is saying, what makes me laugh is Barbados opens up all of the things while exploiting its own people and enriching others who have way better policies to own land and thrive back in their own countries. But are we better off in the other countries? I don't know. I don't know if we are better off in Jamaica, in Trinidad. Do we own lands there, or are the lands being bought up and sold to? I don't know if we're better off than Barbados. Are we? Anne's is saying Indians make up 36% and Africans make up, right? So these are the two large ethnic groups in Trinidad. But yeah, you're right, Anne. I'm not going to argue. You're right that Trinidad and Tobago, is way more diverse in terms of, Jamaica is predominantly black, predominantly of African descent. Over 90% of Jamaica, 95% of Jamaicans are of African descent. Of course, there are some mixtures in their blood too, even though we say they're large of African descent, but they have different mixtures in their blood too. But yes, so if you go to Trinidad, I'm sure you would see a greater diversity. Trevor is saying, when Barbadians complain about opportunities, they tell them they don't want to work. Meanwhile, you can't get anything affordable in Barbados. And one minister said in Parliament, if you don't like it, leave. Yeah, that's what they're telling us now too. That if we don't like it, in fact, what they do, they impose these policies upon us and then tell us that we are the problem. Right? That's what they do. They say, you are the problem. The government is not, the law is not the problem. You are the problem. So it's what is happening in the Caribbean at large right now as we speak. Yeah. So you're getting some. I'm getting some very good background thing. But let's continue. Political independence occurred without economic independence. I repeat that. Political independence occurred without economic independence, and without economic independence, political independence is not going to work. Okay, or cannot work. Foreign corporations continue to dominate key sectors. Caribbean governments remain dependent on external finance. Strategic decisions are often influenced by Washington. The decisions are not made in Port-au-Prince, are not made in Port of Spain, are not made in Kingston, are not made in Georgetown. The economic decisions are made internationally in Washington, D.C., in Paris, in London, the city of London, okay? Certainly not in the Caribbean. Writers often associated with these debates include, and we know that Kwame Nkrumah, with Walter Rodney, C.L.R. James, Eric Williams, Frantz Fanon. Make sure you're reading these authors, right? Kwame Nkrumah, I think he was of Ghana, I think. Walter Rodney of Guyana, and C.L.R. James of Trinidad, Eric Williams of Trinidad, and Frantz Fanon, I think he was from Martinique or Guadeloupe, one of those countries, right? You want to make sure that you read some of these works, or read them. In fact, I have this book with me by Eric Williams right now at my side, Capitalism and Slavery. All right. We need to read these books, and we need to read C.L.R. James, The Black Jacobins by C.L.R. James. Notice that the Haitian guy here, Superman Bro, he says that he reads the Haitian Revolution and the Cuban Revolution multiple times. That is how he understands what is happening in the geopolitical realm. Okay, so you want to do that. And he's true. What he says is spot on. Okay, what this Haitian person has says is spot on. Read those two revolutions, and you will, and the French Revolution too, and you understand. So Caribbean governments are sovereign. They think that they are sovereign states, but really and truly, we are not sovereign states. Local leaders make their own policy decisions. That is what a sovereign state would be, and they are not making their own decisions. Some economic problems stem from domestic governance failures rather than foreign influence. And we have to understand that some of the problems we're facing too, the local elites, the local government, and so forth, are the ones who make those laws that militate against our freedom. Foreign investment has helped create jobs and infrastructure, but to what extent? Is it inclusive? These are the questions that we need to ask. Globalization affects all countries, not just former colonies. That's what they argue, right? But globalization is not for everybody. It's not inclusive. It's only for a selected few. How much of the Caribbean's current situation is the result of external influence versus domestic political choices? Could I ask a question? How much of the Caribbean's current situation is the result of external influence versus domestic political choices? What would you say? Let me get to the comments. All right, so we have here Trevor saying sickening. They sent home loads of workers in Barbados recently and hired the cheap labor and go on TV and said it's because we don't have skilled workers or we want too much money. And that's exactly what they would say in Jamaica too, right? And one of the things they would say in Jamaica, Trevor, is that, oh, wait until better must come. In Jamaica, from the 1970s, Jamaicans have been waiting for better, right? The Jamaican politicians have been saying to Jamaicans that better must come from the 1970s, and we are now in 2026, and better has not come in Jamaica. So you tell me how our politicians behave. If that isn't a slave industry, I don't know what it is. It is. But as I'm saying to you, people don't want to think so because they have some nice hotels. They beautify the landscape. We can't say that that is not true because they do beautify. When you go to Montego Bay, and I'm sure in Barbados, you see some lovely hotels, some lovely, and Bahamas, some lovely luxurious hotels that really beautify the landscape of these countries. But the fact of the matter is that they're not helping to build the economy. Super Batman Bro is saying Haiti more segregation and diverse because during the USA 1915 invasion, they brought southern states, white people, to the capital city, and USA embassy helps pay the gang's lords in Port-au-Prince. And Superman Bratmo, what a beauty, he's sharing his ideas with us. And he has to find the words in English to communicate with us. And I want you to understand that we are more, native speakers of English than he is. He speaks French, I'm sure, and many Haitians speak multiple languages for the most part. And the fact that he is using this sort of English to speak with us, we should be commending him, right? But he's right that there's a lot of segregation in Haiti, but there is diversity there too, right? There's diversity there too, and we ought not to just look at what we see in the media and think that this is Haiti. That's not the real Haiti in many cases. Marie Antoinette is saying, I think that we have leaders who are overly cooperative with the coercion originating from foreign sources. Yes, we need leaders who are not necessarily combative, but at least a little more cunning. Correct. Yeah, because we have to know how to maneuver our way in a very wise and sagacious manner. Because if we are too combative, as we saw with Michael Manley and Maurice Bishop, then they are going to unseat us, right? Because there was much wisdom in what Maurice Bishop and Michael Manley of Jamaica were doing. But I think that Eric Williams of Trinidad did his job, and I think that he was revolutionary in his way, in his own right too, Eric Williams, but he did it in a much more cunning way, which was good, and it helped to build Trinidad, and the United States was not able to go down there and destroy the educational system and whatever progressive policy or policies that Eric Williams actually implemented in Trinidad and Tobago. So Trinidad and Tobago, to some extent, should be, it's not perfect, but it should be, especially in the days of Eric Williams and his contemporaries, should be a sort of model in terms of how we can use cunning and intelligence rather than entering into this combative, confrontational, combat with these people. I think we should. Okay. And Marie saying, in looking after the interest of our Caribbean countries, right. And Eric Williams might not have been perfect. No leader is perfect, but certainly he built the intellectual capital of the Caribbean, if you will, in Trinidad. Right, and he ensured. I spoke to a lot of Trinidadians and people from Tobago also who have spoken very highly of him and what he did. There are people, of course, they're critics, and they're going to be. There are critics of Christ, and Christ was perfect, right? So you're going to have critics all the time. But I think that based on what I have read of Eric Williams, I think that was the pattern. He went to Trinidad and he built, and he went there as a professor. Remember, he was a professor in the United States of economics, and he went there and he sort of turned the country around, had, what you call it now, these street conversation, the dialogues with the people in which he would educate them. And they saw in him a model. So can you imagine your prime minister or somebody that was revered, highly revered in the United States, abroad, right? He wrote Slavery and Capitalism and Slavery, and was able to go and dialogue with them in on the streets, in the what do they call that place there in Trinidad where he used to have those intellectual discourses? Yeah, these are some of the things that our politicians should be doing with us, and then we will see them as people who we can touch, they are tangible, and we can see the struggles that they are working. They know who we are, and I think we have to give Trinidad, and that's why they produce a lot of brilliant people. You have to give them their credit. You have to give Trinidad his credit. Produce a lot of brilliant people. Yeah, so we have speaking of education system, the new education minister in Barbados is seeking to change to the American structure of kindergarten, first grade, etc. They're all trying to go back to the kindergarten and the early childhood education and all of the United Nations sort of objective for how our children should be brainwashed. Be careful of some of these nurseries that you send your children to. Make sure you know where you're sending them to, what they're learning. Try to speak to them when they come back home and some of the things that they're learning in schools, because they're already being brainwashed from that age, right, into what they want them to think and to know. Marie Antoinette is saying, right, University of Woodford Square, right, was the place, correct. That is the place that Dr. Eric Williams would engage his people. And they became, if we want to say, which I would prefer, when Jamaicans are saying we are the cultural or whatever, I would prefer if we were the intellectual capital of the Caribbean. Because that is, and economic, because that is what is more important. Economic and intellectual capital, that is what we should yearn for. All of this entertainment thing, remember the slaves entertained their masters. We were always entertainers. All right, the slaves were always entertaining the white masters. That was their task. So there's nothing special about us entertaining. It's natural in us. African peoples are just natural entertainers. We're warm people, and we love to be hospitable, and we love to entertain our guests, and nothing is wrong with that. But we can't always just remain in this state of entertainment and always wanting to entertain. We have to now get up seriously. We're living in a world where we have to be educated, like Barbadians and the Trinidadians and stuff like that. We need to get our act together. Eric Williams used to say the future of the nation is in the children's book bags. Absolutely. That is where it is. It's not in the dance hall, right? It's not dance hall music or who is the latest, have the latest dance. Okay? It's in the books, and he's right. Anne was saying, yes, it was Woodford Square. Thank you so much for reminding me. Thazi Maccabeus is saying Barbados is following the new world order agenda to a T. Yeah, and I think all the governments, but we can see that Barbados is fully on board, and they're not. She's not in any way apologetic. I think Andrew Holness and the other guys, they're doing it in a very what we want to say now. They're doing it in a very politically charged manner, right? Miss Mia Motley, she just seems, I don't care, and she's doing her thing, and she's not hiding it. Trevor is saying, correct, Barbados PM wears the UN WEF pin on her heart and had to be called out on it. Yeah, she's transparent about what she's doing. Put it that way, right? Let us continue with some of the discussions so we can educate ourselves. Now, how much of the Caribbean's current situation is the result of external influence versus domestic political choices? I think that's what I was asking you to comment. The central question is not whether the Caribbean achieved political independence. It clearly did. Well, to an extent, right? The deeper question is whether political independence translated into genuine economic sovereignty, which it did not. It did not translate into sovereignty, into economic sovereignty. Did colonialism end, or did it evolve into a new system of influence centered on foreign capital, multinational corporations, and international institutions and American geopolitical power? Understanding that debate is essential for anyone seeking to understand the Caribbean's past, present, and future. All right? So we are not clearly not independent. Right? Some of us are a little bit more independent than some because, in the case of Trinidad, it had energy, and we cannot only say that because Trinidad had energy, that's why it is white. It also needed good leaders, right? Remember, now Nigeria also has a lot of energy, and is a rich country by the fact that it has all of that energy. But how much did it build for the large majority of Nigerians, right? So we can't just say because Trinidad had energy. What if Jamaica had energy also? Would it be in the same shoe? I think perhaps it probably would. It depends on the policies that we form around the resources that we have, right? We need visionary leaders like the likes of the Walter Rodneys, and the people like the Eric Williams. Right? Well, C.L.R. James was not in politics, so we can't say that we need him, but certainly he was an intellectual. I don't know how he would have managed in the political realm because he was not somebody who was also, he would say it as it is. He would be combative. C.L.R. James was a combative person by nature. He speaks his mind. you know. But in some cases, maybe I wouldn't be a good politician myself because I also speak my mind. So some of us should not be in that seat because we don't have the personality to be able to sometimes be calm, be charged while trying to, sagaciously accomplish what you need to accomplish for your people. Okay, so some of us are not politicians, and we need to know where our strengths or weaknesses lie. Okay, and certainly Cedar James might not have made a good politician, and that's why he had a lot of problems with Eric Williams too, because Eric Williams understood the realities of the political world, even though Cedar James was no dummy to politics, but he was more in the theory, the realm of theory, right? He was not in the, just like you and I, we are just speaking from external, like, as giving our external observation, but we don't know what is happening in the inner sanctums. And that's why we have to pray for our politicians. By the way, I criticize them, but we also have to pray for our politicians because our politicians are also they're human beings, right? And when somebody threatens you, or we don't know what happens behind the scene and what they tell them, and if they don't do what they tell them to do, so we have to pray that God will give them the, what you call it now, the wisdom to be able to undertake whatever difficult task that they are confronted with, because it's not an easy job. All right, let's be also clear on that. It is not an easy job. Batman Bro is saying the Western media been demonizing my home city. Yes, I see that in Port-au-Prince. Yes, since I've been born, and their empathy hides machetes and knives behind what they speak. Wow, this is very powerful. This is powerful, and Haiti is the jewel of the Caribbean in terms of knowledge, right? Let's talk about that too. Haiti is a jewel of the Caribbean in terms of knowledge, particularly on imperialism, right? And many of us don't recognize that in the United States and in the wider world, in Canada, in France, Haiti has a very strong intellectual class. People who have really, spoken out, written about much about what is happening in the Caribbean. Okay, we tend to just look at our Anglo-speaking authors, the Cedar James and the Eric Williams, and the people from Barbados, the Derek Walcotts from St. Lucian, you know, and this guy in the Castle of My Skin from Barbados, But we tend to look at these authors, the various Naipals of Trinidad also, and we think that, these are the only people that we should read. But we need to read about, other intellectuals, as I'm saying, the Fanons from Martinique or Guadeloupe. We need to read these scholars too, people who are not native speakers of English, because we get and most of their books are written also in English. So if you don't read French or Spanish or Portuguese or Dutch, then you should be able to get them in English, right? Because we have to understand, and he's right, the Super Batman is saying that they have been demonizing Haiti as this country that is, anti-Western and anti-civilization, and that is not true. Right? That is not true. And how much have we helped Haiti as a region? And because we have not helped her, then we are now finding ourselves in a similar position. Look at Jamaica, right? Jamaica now finds itself in a situation where it's lawless. Gangs have taken over Jamaica too. That's why they're now using police brutality there to crush the gangs in Jamaica. That's what they're doing now in Jamaica. They're saying the U.S. is telling Andrew Holness that if you don't want to become another Haiti, you have to use brutal police and military, a joint military and police force, to ensure that you control gangsterism there. Okay? Because Jamaica was moving right, if not in that direction. Haiti was never a country that was violent. We know that. You would never even associate it. We always associated Haiti with some poverty, right? But it was never a country that was associated with gangsterism and with high crime rate. I've never read that. It was always Jamaica. Always Jamaica, among the top 3 in the world, among the top 5 for years, until Andrew Holness of Jamaica decided to use police brutality, and he quelled that. And they could also be hiding the stats. We don't know what they're doing down there. Trevor is saying, remember how Maurice Bishop was taken out by his own right? Talks of raiding Haiti by neighboring CARICOM countries. What he showed was nothing like the rubble and the devastation and fear they push. Absolutely. Did I put it up? I put your thing up. Or a YouTuber. Did I? Let me go back to Anne's comments. I'm coming back to you. Am I reading all of them? Yeah. One of my favorite books in high school was The Black Midas by John Carew. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. We have to read from other Caribbean countries. We don't, in fact, many of us, if, I became more knowledgeable of Trinidad when I was in the States. I was never, we know, of course, that Trinidad is a Caribbean country and all of that. You see them sometimes on the news. But if you don't see them on the news, they don't capture your imagination. I'm sure in Trinidad the same thing happens, right, about Jamaica. So I think that what we need to do, well, the University of the West Indies sort of, was made to sort of bridge that gap. But the University of the West Indies cannot bridge that gap because how many students move from one region to the next? Maybe not many. Right? So we need to involve in our curriculum, we need to have more books written by even other nations in the Caribbean. We need to know the history, the politics about each Caribbean territory. It's just more than going there and visiting and going to some mall and shopping and watching the people. We have to be aware of their history, right? And their politics and everything about Trinidad, Tobago, everything. Most of the Caribbean islands, I knew more and learned more about Trinidad and Tobago in the United States, right? And many people agree with that. And sometimes some of us even know more about our countries outside of our country. I know more about Jamaica outside of Jamaica than when I was in Jamaica. If you understand what I mean. When you're in the culture, you're immersed in the culture. You do everything people do there. You eat what people eat. You say what people say, right? But at the end of the day, how much do you know of yourself? Are you reading about yourselves? And that's why when I talk, people say, "Oh, you don't like Jamaica." Well, of course I like Jamaica, but I'm not going to say things because I like Jamaica and I'm not going to critique Jamaica, right? And that's what we have to do. Now, a YouTuber went to Haiti the other day around the time speed avoided Haiti, and some of his videos were blocked. Wow! What he showed was nothing like the rubble and the devastation and fear they are pushing. Do you know, and I believe you, Trevor, you know what happened to? Last night, I was scrolling through TikTok, right? And there was this girl from the DR Congo, right? And they're saying in DR Congo, they have lots of Ebola cases. And she's saying where she sits, and she's not saying Ebola does not exist. What she's saying, people in the Congo are not fearful of any Ebola. She said it is the Western media which is pushing that sort of Ebola agenda, getting people worked up, getting people fearful, and they are the ones who are pushing the agenda, and not that Ebola is something that anybody has to be afraid of or concerned about at the moment. Right? Do you see what I'm saying? So this is how the Western movie, Jan was Guyanese. Okay, thank you for telling me that. It is pronounced Yang. Okay, thank you for the pronunciation as well. And Thazi is saying, I understand that the Haitian people had electricity in their streets and homes post-revolution until the Europeans returned and destroyed all the infrastructure. They are a very innovative people. Do you know that after the revolution happened, Thazi, and the revolution was from what? From 1891, and it went on. It was like in periods, right? So you had one where they had the 1891 to probably 1894, 1895. Sorry, 17, not 18, 1791. I'm mixing up the dates now. 1791 to 1794, 95. And do you know that Toussaint Louverture, having, led the revolution, that he went back and rebuilt the country? Can you imagine the massive destruction after the revolution? He rebuilt the country in 1796, 1797. The country was like where it used to be, up and running. And Toussaint was inviting them to come there and say, let's work together let's work together, inviting the French, that is, to come and say, let us work together. And instead of doing that, they came down there and they destroyed everything that he had rebuilt. It is to show you, it is to show you that Europeans do not want to see a thriving African-based society. All right? They don't want to see a thriving based African society. And had what's his name from France? Had what was his name again? The president of France at the time, the leader of France, Napoleon. Had Napoleon not gone and devastated Haiti in the way that he did, and had Haiti not been required to pay also the indemnity, the reparation that they had to pay to their colonial masters for giving them their freedom, Haiti would be way ahead of us. Haiti would be way ahead of any country in the Caribbean, maybe, rivaling North America. Okay? So this is what we have to understand about Haiti, that Haiti is a very important country and we need to renew its history. Andrew, you mixed two of my comments. Go back to the one on Maurice Bishop. Okay, let me see. I'll go back. Maurice Bishop. Is this the correct Barbados PM? Let me see if where did you have the I read this one. You said YouTuber went to Haiti the other day around time speed. I read this one. So which one did I mix up? I don't know which one I mixed up, Trevor. Yeah, so Andrew, you mixed two of my comments. Go back to the one about Maurice Bishop. The comments were coming fast. They're certainly not coming fast on my end. Speaking of education, is it this one? Speaking of education system, the new education minister in Barbados, I read this one from you, Trevor. So I'm not sure which one you're talking about, Trevor. I think I've read all of your comments that I'm seeing here. You should suggest some of the books for people to pick up and get up to speed. Yes, I think I need to come back. And people were asking me to do a book thing. I don't know if why do there were many. I had many of you on this thing once. Like we'd have like 30 people every time on my live and more. I don't know where these people are. They're just gone. They just vanished. Toussaint Louverture exactly learned Dominican Spanish war tactics and Spanish. Yeah, and he learned a lot from the French too. He was a very brilliant man. And he learned tactics from the French, from the British, right? And he used them. And that's what we can do too, we can use tactics, some of their tactics, and make them our own so we can liberate ourselves. And that's exactly what Toussaint did. He was his weakness was that he was too trusting of the system. We need to partner with the system, but we can't become too trusting of the system. And some of us are, right? So we can't be too what extremist where we are against the system and everybody is evil and all of that. We can't be, at the same time, we cannot trust the system in its entirety. The minute the world was split into sectors, First World, etc., by the League of Nations, now UN, everyone should have known it was a scam on a treadmill to nowhere. Correct. But I think that people are still thinking that we need an international body to protect us against, the violations of international law. But what we're seeing, we do need some form of international law. But you really wonder who should control it, I don't know. And then these countries too, they're elitist. Even the United Nations, it's only, look at who are on the Security Council, and they've been on the Security Council forever. China, Russia, the United States. Is Canada on it too? I don't think Canada is on it. And probably two other countries, and they've had it. Why don't they include other people, that people can be there to decide when to war, not to war? You can't just put China and these countries and you don't have other countries there too. It is the comment before my Black Midas comment. Okay, let me go back to the Black Midas comment and see if I can see his comment. So the Black Midas comment. Um, it's yeah. I'm trying to see if I could see his comment here with the black meters. Indians make up that. Um, yes, it was Woodford Square. One of the yeah. Okay, so it was before. So yeah, I see the black meters now. So is this the one, Trevor, where you say remember how yeah, you remember how Maurice Bishop was taken out by his own talks of reading. But I read this, didn't I read it? But let's reread it. Remember how Maurice Bishop was taken out by his own talks of raiding Haiti by neighboring CARICOM countries, waiting to end Kamala, etc. It is ridiculous. I remember seeing this and reading it, but maybe you didn't see it when I was reading it. Let's go back now. Where am I now? I think I'm. I hope you can now tell me where I am. Remember how Maurice Bishop? Oh, I read this already. Oh, I think you want me to reread it. So yeah, okay. Remember how Maurice Bishop was taken out by his own talks of raiding Haiti by neighboring CARICOM countries, waiting to end Kamala, etc. It's ridiculous. So we read that probably 3 times. Trevor, the persons creating the international laws are the ones violating the very laws. And this is what we need to understand. The same people who are creating the laws, even the laws on how when war should be waged and all of that, are the very ones who are behind doing them, violating these laws, you know. And yeah. So thank you, Anne. We did get to his comment. Super Batman Broy saying King Henry Christophe, first trusted advisor Baron de Vaste, wrote a very perfect historical view of the French slave masters' horrific crimes and acts. It's called The Colonial System Unveiled in Haiti. I'll look for that book. It seems like it's something I would want to read. Thank you so much, sir, for presenting that book to me. It's a very painful book, but helped me to understand what my ancestors went through. Yeah, so we have to read our history as well, the history of Haiti, the history of most of our countries in the Caribbean. We need to be able to become, readers and studiers of our own history. Students, I think studiers, students of our own history. So yeah, I think we need to. When I was growing up in school, we thought that history was boring. The way all the teachers presented history, it was boring. But we have to understand that history instructs what is happening at the present. And without understanding what happened last year or years before, we will not understand what is happening at the present moment. All right, so that is what I think. All right, so any other comment? I think that the live was great in terms of we might not have had the numbers that we want to have, but I'm sure the dialogue, the conversation today was deep. And please share the live. Whether you're in Haiti or you're in Trinidad, in Barbados, in Grenada, in Guyana, share it with as many people so that they can be able to get it, interact with it, and to subscribe. Because the algorithm is not going to do it for us. It seems like it's on its own. In its own world, right? So I can't force algorithm to do what it doesn't want to do. So make sure you're saving the live. Any other comment? I think that we had yes, please hit the like button, right? Please hit the like button and please share the live with as many and put it on your social media platforms, so that we can get as many people to see these things, begin to interact with them, because we're in a serious crisis right now. Thazi saying we have good quality people making intelligently. Right. These are the people that we want on the live. Intelligent and profound and informative. We are all learning from each other comments. And yes, thank you so much indeed. So, yeah, it was a very good. So make sure you share the live Super Batman Bro. I think the Haitians have a lot to teach us. And I say that unapologetically because, I've read some of their works and they are some very heavyweight intellectuals, right? And even the common Haitian, the normal Haitian on the streets, when you speak to the normal Haitian man or woman, when you speak to them on the streets, they know a lot more than the average Anglo-speaking persons coming out of the Caribbean, right? It's amazing. Right, it's amazing how much they know, and how they speak so many languages. It's something that I don't understand. It's really amazing how they go into people's cultures and people's language, and they just eat it. Now he here's somebody who lives in Haiti and he's writing these advanced stuff in English. Do you know how hard it is when you're even writing in Spanish or Portuguese to write a political commentary because and you have to use a certain caliber vocabulary? Yeah, it's hard, right? So the fact that he's doing this shows to us his level of education and the fact that he's reading and he's knowledgeable of the world in which he lives. Any other comment, question? Because the conversation is rich and it's good, but I know we have our respective public jobs and things that we're doing at home. Any comments? So we're not free. I think that that's the major the gist of the matter is that we're not free. Economically we're not free, and that is where we should, and Marcus Garvey told us that that is what we should be doing, is to gain economic freedoms. Can we blame our political leaders from the 1960s? No. All right, they did do the first part of it, the first part of the work, some of the lifting. Did they make mistakes? Yeah, they would make mistakes. They're human beings. So it's now for us, rather than sitting down and saying what Eric Williams didn't do or what Michael Manley didn't do or Norman Manley, it is for us now to see if we can build, our nations. Yes, it's very impressive what we had here today. How we can build our nations together. We have to be the ones now to say, we're living in this. Do we want our children and our grandchildren to inherit a free space, Caribbean space? We didn't grow up. We grew up in some freedom. Let's not be unfair now. We had some, and we still do have some freedom, and we have to exercise it the best way that we can. But we can't believe that we're going to just sit and wait on our politicians to do the other lifting. We also have to either push them so that they can do what is in our best interest. Because certainly economically, we are going in the wrong direction, people. We're moving in the wrong direction, or people are getting poorer and poorer every day. And not because we have a credit card and we can go to the supermarket and buy anything we want with a credit card means that we are economically solvent. All right? It doesn't mean that we're economically solvent. Not because we have a job that is probably paying us a good salary right now doesn't mean that we're also economically solvent. Because many of us don't own any assets, really, or any assets that count. We might own a home, but that too can go at any time, right? We don't own land for the most part, and everything is just the politicians and the business elites are just using ways, crafting laws that are taking everything from us. They're creating natural disasters, pandemics that are going to affect us, and we have to now say, call a spade a spade. The less our children and grandchildren know, the better slave they are, no identity. And that's the whole point. And many of us think that ignorance is bliss. Many people go around saying ignorance is bliss. Ignorance is not bliss, right? Ignorance is slavery. We are enslaving ourselves. And maybe some ignorance is bliss, but most ignorance is not bliss. Okay, and ignorance of our political system is not bliss. It means, therefore, that they can enslave us and we will not know. And they have enslaved us or are enslaving us. And many people do not know because they're more concerned about the gossips and the dramas in Parliament. Heavy is the head, and the wisdom we have brings it fair share of grief. Yes, and you're right about that because I think Solomon said it, Trevor, that with much wisdom, I think that is in Ecclesiastes 1 verse 18, with much wisdom comes sorrow. I think with much wisdom or knowledge, the wisest man in the world is saying when you are so knowledgeable and wise, you are going to be sad, I mean, sad in the sense that you are not going to just go around looking sad on your countenance, right? You have to be joyful. If you have peace in the Lord, you will be joyful. But you understand what is happening, and very few people are seeing it, and it makes you sad, right? It makes you sad. It really makes you sad because you realize that the people are misinformed, they are misdirected, and you really want to say stop, stop, and you try, only a few, if any, stop. So this is what we're saying here, that when you have wisdom, you have understanding, it's a very sad journey. Not that we should walk around looking sad and and making people's lives sad. We should. Surely oppression maketh a wise man mad. And yeah, and that is true. Okay, and aren't we tired of the oppression, or do we like it because we have our cell phones now, so we can, when we're oppressed, we can just go on TikTok and look at some funny little memes and laugh, right? Is that why we're surviving, people? Or something is wrong? We have been just misinformed. I just don't know. I just don't know. I just don't know why, for example, when we talk about topics like these, we're not attracting 1,000 people on the live or more, because these are very important topics. This is what we should be talking about every day now, right up to independence. And many of us in Trinidad and Jamaica and Barbados and all of us practically are going to be celebrating independence shortly in August, right? Probably in September, October. But this is what we should be talking about. Right up to independence. And if we were talking about this, do you know how our governments would feel uncomfortable? We would make them uncomfortable, because they would like, oh, they're not going to want to attend the gala because they realize that these galas are just, frivolous. It's not really doing anything for them. It's not liberating them. Right? And the government spend millions of dollars. I can't remember how much Trinidad spends in its gala, Jamaica too, to make these people go out and feel good about themselves. We're Jamaicans, we're Trinidadians, we're Tobagonians, right? And don't get me wrong, it's good. Don't get me wrong, it has its place, to be able for people to go and, join in their culture and feel a sense of national pride. Nothing is wrong with that. What I'm saying, we can't eat national pride every day. And I think that is what many of us sit down and do every day, just eating national pride. We can't eat national pride every day. We can't eat Trinidad to the world every day. We can't eat, Olympics is not going to be run every day. The football, the World Cup is not going to be every day. Just, a short time, and people get their high and vouch for their footballer or their football, squaddy, but at the end of the day, it's not going to solve our problems, right? It's not going to solve our problems. Marie's saying, in order to attract thousands of people on the live, we would have to live stream a World Cup, right? Tucker, exactly. That's exactly what. Or it has to be. I probably would have to have some sensationalist sort of topic, that the entire Caribbean is going to be destroyed in 9 days. Right? Some fearful topic. Caribbean is on the verge of collapse in 5 days, in 20 days. I want to hear what that is what they're going to get people on the live to discuss. The moment they see something, the moment you begin to talk about the 1950s, that's irrelevant. I don't care, right? I don't care. And this is what happens with people. Work and distractions, hearing these things shakes people in their sleep and are now only supposed to be spoken by the so-called leaders. Absolutely. It's off topic for us. You're right. It's right. Or speed, right? If we get on a speed show, or maybe we need to invite Speed on the live, right? Maybe we need to invite Speed on the live to talk about Caribbean history, and maybe they will show up. I saw him talking about giving a brief recap of his Caribbean tour on YouTube. I didn't look at the video. I just saw the thing in my feed, right? And in 1 hour, he had over 36K views in 1 hour, right? That was Speed. He was giving a recap of his Caribbean tour. It's to show you how excited Caribbean people are about what he did in the Caribbean. I'm not saying no. Don't get me wrong. I mean, that has its purpose, whatever that purpose is, right? And everybody should have their means of earning and eating a bread. Nothing is wrong with that. That is, people, we are living in a free society, and I should not be free to talk about this or think whatever I'm doing is better than what he's doing. The fact of the matter is that we need to diversify what we do. And we can't always just talk about shallow things about what Miss Mia Motley is doing and some corruption. And we know that at the end of the day, Mia Motley doesn't control the political system. She's just being used, right? But people don't want to hear that. They would rather sit up and go, if a big live now, Miss Mia Motley and what she's doing to destroy Barbados, and and at the end of the day, what do you get from that? When Miss Mia Motley is going to go anyway, she's going to go one of these days. She will have to go, right? Whether she likes it or not, she will have to go. And Barbados is going to have to face some of the problems that they're facing right now. Still face them, right? One day, Mrs. Kamala Person Bissessar will go. She just has to go. And Trinidad and Tobago will be in the same problem, or probably even worse than what she has left. So we have to look at the system to see how much we can improve on the system, and for us to move forward, we have to look beyond the personalities that are steering our countries, be they Andrew Holness of Jamaica, Miss Kamala Person Bissessar of Trinidad, Miss Mia Motley, Mr. Ali of Dr. Ali rather of Guyana, and all of the others who are living in their respective Caribbean territories. And that's what we're here to do, and to make sense of the world in which we live. Because the world in which we live, there is the sense of trying to understand what is happening is just difficult every day. Look at Trump saying, every day he's saying there's a peace, he's trying to broker peace between Iran, and he's striking the country. Does that make any sense? Yesterday you said you're near an agreement, and tomorrow you're striking the country. So you really wonder, really, what is happening in this world? The poster child in Burkina Faso is in the same position, just he is the first one crossing into the other master's rule, right? And it's amazing that he's now in power for how many years? What's his name? The guy from Burkina Faso. I forgot his name. But he's been in power for some years now, and we just don't know much about him. Isn't that strange? Right? We're just hearing all of the great things that he's doing. Right? but if you scrub the internet, right? Traore, right? Ibrahim Traore. If you should scrub the Traore, right? Traore 1000. Thank you. If you should scrub the internet to search for, and I have done it. I have scrubbed it, trying to read all the articles pertaining to his name. It's very difficult to come up with anything substantive about him and his past, what he did, his accomplishments and stuff like that. You have some just superficial stuff, and it ends there, right? But you see lots of things praising him. We have to be careful when you see people, human beings, praising other human beings, and you have little to show about their past. You have to be very careful, right? And I'm not one of them to say that he's not doing well, because we just don't know. He perhaps is a good guy, great intention, but why is there such little about him is something that really concerns me. Russian-owned oil field in Burkina Faso, 85%, 50% to Burkina Faso. yeah, right. So are they really independent? And the people who are on Russia's side are going to say, well, Russia is better than America. Well, do you think so? Do you really think so? Do you think that Russia is going to, protect Africa and its people? Look at some people saying that Russia was going to protect Cuba. Where's Russia now with Cuba in the Cuban sort of situation? What are they saying? Are they standing up to the United States and saying you can send your? In fact, there's a ship there in the Caribbean right now off the coast there near to Cuba, waiting to indict and to kidnap the Raul Castro, and maybe the current president of of Cuba. What's his name? Diaz-Canel. Right there now, what is Russia doing? What is Russia saying? How is Russia protecting Cuba now? And there was somebody on my program the other day who suggested that Russia was not going to allow the United States to, run roughshod over Cuba. Right? That is how we are so naive in our understanding of the world. When we see other things happening, like what happened in Venezuela, I heard the same people saying that, Russia would also not have allowed the United States to have, gone into Venezuela and captured the president. It happened. right before our eyes. It happened. Okay, and right now I don't like it, but we can't also begin to be so tied to our ideologies that we can't see the reality. We have, even though we might not like the reality, we have to say the reality is the reality, even though we don't like it. You know, oh, you said gold. Okay, gold, not oil. Okay, I got you. I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But that's the whole thing. That is the whole thing. That is the whole thing. But what do you think? Do you think that that should be the case, though, Trevor? Do you think that's a good thing that Russia controls 85% of the gold of Burkina Faso's gold? Is that what you're suggesting? Is that what you're saying? You know, I don't think so. I don't think so, because whether it's Russia or it's Jamaica or it is Trinidad, no foreign country should control most of what you produce in your own country. Okay, it's not a good sign, and it shows who controls whom. Right? And this is what we're saying here. We have to look who are the major controllers of our resources, our natural resources. And when we look from Jamaica to Barbados to Guyana, we are seeing where it's foreign people who control these natural resources. So how do we say that we're free? The bauxite, the oil, the gas. Okay? Look at Guyana. Guyana should be the richest country in the hemisphere, in this region right now. In CARICOM should be the richest on paper because it's growing, astronomically fast. Yet still, it's poor. Most of the people there are poor. How is that happening? These are the contradictions that we're trying to unpack on this channel, and that's what we're here for. And I can't unpack all of it, so you are here to help me to unpack them. No, I was laughing at how does that liberate Burkina Faso, and how does that make Traore look the liberator? Very good question. Yeah, right. And but the people who love Russia are going to come and tell me now that, oh, you are anti-Russia. I am not anti-Russia. And as I'm saying, I wouldn't be anti-Jamaica if I said Jamaica should not own most of Burkina Faso's wealth. I would not be anti-Jamaican. I'm just being practical in terms of who controls whom, right? So you can't tell me that Burkina Faso is free, right? You can't tell me that Burkina Faso is a free country. Okay, as many people are on here saying, and they're going to go to Burkina Faso and it's amazing. I like to hear our people talk, but it's the way how we're talking, and and seeing that the reality is not really aligning. If it's going to rain, you see clouds, right? Well, sometimes the clouds might not be there, but for the most part, if it's going to rain, particularly it's going to have torrential rains, you'll see the dark clouds hanging over the sky. Now, if you're seeing that it is dark and the drizzle begins and you're smelling the rain, it's going to rain. But if you're seeing all of those signs and you're just saying there's no rain and you can go and do whatever you want to do, then something is wrong with you, definitely. Now we have Russia, America, China, and Europe are all on the same page. Right. They have their agenda. All of them wants to gain preeminency. Right? They all want to win. They all want to be the predominant power. So they will have behind the scenes, whatever. Just like a family. You and I might be of a rich family, right? And we have our agenda. Maybe we are part of the oligarchs. But the oligarchs in that family we're trying to, fight over who should control who and who should get what part of the family's wealth and all of that stuff. So they do have those sort of wranglings, but it's not about us. Right? It's about the family, the oligarchs, and what they want and what the sister should get and what the brother should get. But that is not our conversation. That's the conversation among the oligarchs. And that's what I'm saying that we need to understand. And we need to stop thinking that their conversation is our conversation. Okay? And that is what we have made their conversation ours. And at the end of the day, they win, we lose. And even if they lose, they're not losing in the way that we're losing. Okay? They believe in Wakanda, Even in imaginary Wakanda, they were selling out to the European so-called Avengers. Yeah, yeah. And Thazi is saying they all agree on keeping us ignorant and poor, keeping us ignorant and poor, stripping us of everything or even our economic resources that we have worked hard for. Right? That's what they're doing. Right? That is what they're doing. They are consolidating even the economic wealth that we, the people, because they didn't build any economic wealth. No, we think the elites, like the Bill Gates and these people, the Elon Musk of the world, have built what do you call it now? What economic resources? But they haven't. We are the ones who have built the economic resources, economic wealth, and they've now used their parasites, and they come up with their, oh, we are foreign investors, and they come and they buy off your thing, right? And then they say that they have all this wealth that they have not worked for, right? But you and I believe that they've worked for it. And you and I think that they are superior by the fact that they're multi-billionaires. And we get so, wow, these people, they're wealthy, and we want to get a job with them when they have stolen, literally parasites, stealing the wealth of people's hard-earned money and wealth. Trevor is saying, remember, one of the major goals for Agenda 2030 and the NWO is to have everyone on universal basic income, aka welfare state. And that's what they're working towards. Believe it or not, that is what they're working towards. And if the dollar collapses tomorrow, and those of us you think, oh, the dollar collapses tomorrow, the US loses. Well, the citizens, yes, but the leaders and the oligarchs are not losing. We are the ones losing. Because when they now begin to say all of us will earn the same salary, the same amount of money, communism. Can you imagine the United States is suggesting that they're trying to uproot communism in Cuba, right, and in other countries, yet still the New World Order is moving towards communism, right? Moving towards socialism. Now, isn't that contradictory? But the fact is that they want to control it, right? The certain oligarchs want to control communism under their rulership, not under Fidel Castro or Raul Castro or Miguel Canaz, right? It must be communism under our leadership. That is what they're working towards. And that is the irony. Yeah, that is the irony. That is a paradox, right? That they're telling us that we shouldn't be communists, but they're moving into that direction of the world becoming a big blown communistic world. Rules for them and rules for me and for you. Exactly so. Right? They're making up the rules, but the rules are not for them. The rules are for us. And by the way, some of you think, in Russia, in the communist bloc, they had what you call atheistic communism. The communism that is going to come for the New World Order is going to be a religious communism. And that is going to be even worse. It's going to be a worse form of atheistic communism. Right? Because it's one thing when you are suggesting, that, there's no God and whatever. And there's another thing when you're saying, God tells me that you have to behave this way. Right? It's going to be this black and white thing, and you have to follow or you are going to die. And that is what we talk about the mark of the beast. You either worship or you don't. And if you don't, then you are going to be killed. Right? And people are just still walking around thinking that the world is just moving into this newfound liberty. And if we just can get Iran to, Iran is going to win, and then we're going to move us into a period of freedom, and and they're going to fight, and Africa will go back to Africa, and Africa is going to liberate the world. Okay? How is that going to happen when we're seeing Africa also is captured, like the Caribbean? Africa is also a captured continent for the most part. So how is she going to be liberated? Nobody's saying it. She's just going to be liberated because she has some black people, and black people believe in freedom. Okay? Do black people believe in freedom? Do you think so? Do you think African peoples believe in freedom? That's another conversation we need to have. I'm not going to have it now. We need to have another live asking the question, do African peoples, peoples of African descent, do we believe in freedom? And I'm saying holistically in freedom as we say we are. Because we like to talk about slavery too, and we have to talk about it. But we have not spoken about Africa back in the days. Was it all that free as we claim it was? Or are we romanticizing Africa? Okay? We have to also call a spade. We have to take an introspective look at ourselves. And oftentimes we are not doing that. We tend to look at other cultures and say they're this and they're that. And we are nice people, and we are the best people in the world. We are the whatever of civilization, the mother of human civilization. And that might be true. But how is that helping us? How is us romanticizing our history helping us to be economically solvent and strong countries? Okay, we need to get out of this sort of romanticization of Africa and begin to say these are the things that we need to look at. These are Africa's strong points and her weak points. In Caribbean history taught at school, they teach the so-called black man they were slaves and the history and the origin ended there. That's exactly how they taught it, right? And we don't know much about ourselves, so where we came from. That was not taught in history. Where did we come from, right? And who contributed to slavery in that system? Why didn't it happen in India? Why didn't they go to India and get the slaves? Why in Africa? Right? Why? Were we complicit? And these are the questions that we have to ask. But even by our so-called Pan-Africanists now, they frame the whole conversation in a way where blacks are righteous and Europeans are evil. Right? That is the way it's framed now. So it's from one extreme to the next. And then we don't know where we stand. So they will always control us because we never tell the truth about ourselves. And mind you, to muddy the waters, some more they call you a color, right? And people will come on the live now and they will say, well, he's not black because he's the CIA controls him because he's not saying what other Pan-Africanists are saying. And I laugh at people who call themselves Pan-Africanists because what does that mean too? What does that mean? We give ourselves all these labels, right? Don't we? And at the end of the day, how are these labels helping us to understand who we really are as a people? They're not helping us that much. We can walk around with Pan-Africanism all we want to. But how is it helping us? It's almost like a religion. When you talk about Pan-Africanism, it's almost like it's a religion. And a secular religion, that is. And people, if you don't talk what they think, you have people like Dr. Umar Johnson who believes that, black people should just marry to black people. And if you marry to somebody outside of your ethnic heritage, it means therefore that you don't like the race. You don't like your people. Is that religion? Is not what we think religion does? And in terms of you shouldn't go and marry somebody out of the religion because they might proselytize you and you end up, losing your faith. Right? I don't know. Some of the things that I see happening and people just blindly accept these things as they are never fails to imagine me. Yeah, it is a religion. It's a secular religion. And it's like a religion. It is a religion. If you don't repeat the same things that Omar Johnson and all these other people repeat, and they say the same thing over and over, right? China is great. Russia is great. America is evil. And, one of the things is that in the same way Jamaicans like to say that they're the capital of the Caribbean, yet they're moving. 74% of them want to go depend on the country, is the same way that many of us who are of African descent in the Western Hemisphere, we want to destroy everything Western, as if we never helped to build. A lot of what is here in Western societies, we also contributed in building them, right? The good things and the bad things, right? So we ought to embrace what is good that we have helped to construct and to build, rather than to just say the entire system is evil while the other system is great. And many of us, just like Jamaicans, and many of us does not want to, we wouldn't want to live in Russia. We wouldn't want to live in Russia, right? Many of us wouldn't opt. I'm not saying that Russia doesn't have a few people who are living, black people who are living there, but the large majority of African Americans would not decide, or people in the Caribbean, to go and live in Russia. Well, they would probably say it's cold too and all of that, but they would not want to live under the system that the Russians have. I can tell you that. Greetings, Pedro. Yeah, I was wondering where you are. You have always contributed well to our discussions. Why they head to the West to live is amazing, right? And that is the whole thing. We complain about the system, and don't get me wrong, there are bad things of the system, just like there are bad things in your country that you live in. Whether you're in Jamaica or Barbados or Trinidad and Tobago, they're all bad things, good and bad things about our respective countries. Okay, so what it doesn't mean, therefore, that we will tear down everything good, whether the Prime Minister is doing or that the country represents. Right? We highlight the good things about the Prime Minister of the country, and the things that need to be improved on. We can say that these things need to be improved on. And probably there are many things to be improved on. Trevor is saying, my brother, glad to see you. Yes, I'm glad to see Pedro Jamat. He's always brings a lot of intelligent conversations. The live is wrapping up now, but it was incredible. Yes. And Jamat is saying, Trevor, hail, I just see this. Right. I don't know why the notifications. Why are you not getting notifications? Because this live was promoted from day before yesterday. So they should have had enough time, the algorithm, but the algorithm is not sending out the notifications. I had two other videos day before yesterday, and one the day before. Try to go and watch those videos, please, and make sure you like them and you share them, because the algorithm is not giving you the notifications. I don't know why. And they seem to be sending the videos to the wrong people, the wrong audience, and then send back the video and say the video is not being watched. It's a lot of very strange things happening on YouTube. There are a few, Marie Antoinette is saying, there are a few affluent, predominantly African neighborhoods in Russia. I would like to study medical courses there. Yeah, that would be good, but I would not live there. I'm not sure. Well, I'm sure that your experience could be good, Marie. I'm just saying that the large majority of us, if Russia was great, would have heard. We people go to Canada. Canada, my heavens is cold too, right? Canada can be very cold too. Maybe not as cold as Russia, but Canada is also cold. And people go there because they think that there's progress there. They can get something to do there. They can build from nothing in these countries, right? But you don't hear that predominantly spoken about. But the wealthy, yes, you can build your wealth in other countries, and you can go to Russia and live. I'm sure you can, if you want to. Haven't seen you. Wow, you see what I'm saying? Please go on the channel, and that's the whole thing. Please go on the channel every day. Most of the times, I do publish a video every day. The algorithm is the one not sending the videos along. And I've been telling that I don't know what YouTube is doing. The other day I told you that I lost 1,000 subscribers. I contacted them and said that I lost 1,000 subscribers in 3 hours. And they're telling me that the channel is running as normal. They don't want to solve anything. Trevor is saying, I had it set to notify me, but I did not get the notification. And I day before yesterday, I sent out the promotion, right? I set up the thing in the studios. I saw it only because I remembered the approximate time you would be on. Wow. Thank you, and that is why we're not seeing. So we can't even blame our subscribers. So I have to apologize. I apologize, dearly subscribers. It's the algorithm that is not sending notifications to the people. Mr. Algorithm, please send the notifications to the people. Um, right. I know you're a subscriber, Pedro. Yeah, I know that you're a subscriber, but they're not sending the subscription notifications to the people, and this is deliberate because it's been happening. I've contacted them. I've told them that this is what is happening, and they're telling me the channel is working as it should work. Right? I don't know what they mean by that. So yeah, this is how it is. I just have to play until they decide to change their games. So I think that this was a very good discussion. If there is no if we don't have any more, what do you call it now? I don't think I need to have this. If we don't have any more if there's no more contribution rather, and more comments, then we can go. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for joining. Yeah. Yes. Oh, you get all the postings. Oh, good. You got all the postings. Well, good. So some do and some don't. All right. So that's good. All right. So please share the live with as many people. This was a very healthy discussion, and you did make your contribution. You did make some very good contribution to the discussion, and I think thank you so much, Dr. Hansen. Thank you for joining the live. Yes, we are going to talk again soon. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, have a great evening. Right, and we'll talk another time. Thank you, Marie. Always value your comments, Marie Antoinette, and please share the live with as many people on the platform. Bye bye. See you.